Under the glare of the noon sun, the road into Cedar Hollow shimmered like it might dissolve into smoke. Heat rose from the dirt in slow, wavering ribbons. A figure walked there small, barefoot, the hem of her dress dragging through dust that clung like it meant to keep her. Her hair, the color of pale wheat, was matted and darkened in places with sweat and grit. She did not stop, though every step looked like it might fold her to the ground. From the porch of the Black Spur Saloon, a man watched. Eli Boone leaned on the railing, hat brim shading his eyes, the slow rock of his weight forward and back, betraying nothing of the sharpness with which he measured her movements. He'd seen desperation before. In the cavalry, it had worn all kinds of shapes: soldiers, with eyes gone flat, children carrying what couldn't be carried, women running from something, to close behind. But this was different. There was something in the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, not to check for danger, but as if danger was already there, riding the same road, silent and patient. When she reached the water trough in front of the saloon, she didn't so much kneel as collapse, knees hitting the packed earth with a thud that drew heads from shaded windows. Her hands trembled over the edge of the trough, dipping into the warm water as though it might burn. She bent low, cupped water to her mouth, and drank with the greed of someone who wasn't sure she'd ever drink again. Eli stepped down from the porch. His boots made a slow, steady sound on the planks, the rhythm of a man who knew that sudden movement could startle something into flight. She heard him before she saw him, and when she turned, her eyes widened not in recognition, but in the reflex of a cornered animal. The words came out raw, cracked from her throat. "Don't hurt me. I'll be your wife if you just don't hurt me." He stopped where he was. For a moment, nothing but the cicadas filled the air between them. Then, without speaking, he slid his canteen from his belt and set it down on the trough beside her. The metal clinked softly against the wood. Her gaze darted between the canteen and his face. He didn't reach for her, didn't close the distance. He just lowered himself to sit on the edge of the trough, keeping his eyes on the empty street ahead, as if she weren't offering herself as a bargain against some violence she expected. She took the canteen, drank. A trickle ran down her chin, catching the light before it fell to the dust. She swiped at it with the back of her hand. Her knuckles scraped raw. From the window above, Martha Gibbons leaned out, apron dusted with flour, mouth already primed for talk. "Strays don't last here unless someone claims M," she called. Her voice carried further than she intended. The men in the saloon turned their heads toward the sound. A few chuckled. Someone muttered, "She's trouble." Another, lower and sharper, "Looks like Drayton's girl." The name hit like the crack of a whip. The girl's grip on the canteen froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Eli caught at the flicker in her eyes, the way her shoulders rose, as if bracing for a blow. He turned his head just enough to look at her. "You got a place to go." She hesitated, then shook her head once. He stood. "Come on." He didn't wait to see if she'd follow, just walked toward the livery at the edge of town, his pace slow enough for her to keep up. She did, her steps uncertain but drawn by the gravity of someone who wasn't asking her name or her sins. Inside the livery, the smell of hay and horses wrapped around them, warm and faintly sweet. Eli gestured to a small cot in the corner, little more than a canvas sling on a wooden frame, but cleaner than the dirt road. "You can stay here tonight," he said, blankets folded there. She stood in the doorway for a moment, fingers gripping the edge of the frame, as if she expected him to change his mind. "I'll be outside," he added. "Plenty of air." He left her there, stepping into the shade of the awning. From the bench, he could see the saloon, the street, and the black ribbon of the road stretching away toward the horizon. A place like Cedar Hollow kept its eyes open, but not its hands clean. He knew by morning, her presence here would be stitched into a dozen different versions of the truth, none of them kind. Through the evening, the town settled into its usual murmurs: boots on the boardwalk, the clink of glasses, the hollow thud of billiard balls. Every so often, Eli heard a shift inside the livery, the soft creak of the cot, the rustle of the blanket. When night came, clouds rolled in low and heavy, the kind that meant rain. He lit a lantern and set it by the stable door, a pool of gold, against the dark. Somewhere past midnight, the rain began, soft at first, then steady, tapping on the tin roof. He rose from the bench and stepped inside to check the stalls. The horses shifted in their sleep, tails flicking at unseen things. She was awake, eyes open in the dim light. When she saw him, her breath caught. He paused in the doorway, not speaking, just long enough for her to see the lanterns glow around his silhouette. "You need anything?" he asked. She shook her head. "All right." He nodded once, then stepped back, letting the darkness reclaim the space. The rain thickened, drumming harder against the roof. She pulled the blanket to her chin, listening to the sound of his boots fade, then the quiet of him outside, his presence steady as the night. It was a small thing, no touch, no promises, but it held more weight than anything she'd been offered in a long time. In the stillness, she felt the tension in her body loosen, her eyes drifting shut despite herself. Somewhere beyond the livery walls, the town slept, its secrets folded in the rain. Somewhere on the road, a man named Silas Drayton was still riding, but, for the first time in years, Clara May Hollister closed her eyes without bracing for the moment she'd have to run again. Morning came with the smell of wet earth, the rain having rinsed the dust from the air. The light that crept through the gaps in the livery boards was pale and uncertain, as if it too were deciding whether to enter. Clara woke to the faint murmur of voices outside, low, cautious, the kind that carried more weight for being quiet. She sat up, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. A few words reached her through the walls. Martha's voice, "He's coming for her." A pause, then, sharper, "You know who." Boots scuffed against the packed ground. Eli's voice followed, steady, but clipped. "Get folks to mind their business." Clara moved to the door, peering through the narrow slit between the planks. Eli stood by his horse, tightening the cinch. His jaw was set, his movements economical. But there was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there last night. "You stay in here," he said, without turning his head, as if he knew she was watching. "Don't open that door unless it's me." Her throat tightened. "It's him, isn't it?" Eli looked at her then, just long enough to confirm what she already knew. "Stay put." The sound came before the sight, a slow, deliberate rhythm of hooves on damp earth. Silas Drayton rode in like a man sure of his welcome, hat tilted, a smile drawn with the precision of someone who had practiced it in mirrors. His coat was too fine for a drifter, his boots too clean for someone who'd been chasing a runaway. The few townsfolk, braving the morning air, stepped back, giving him space without quite turning their backs. Cedar Hollow had learned long ago that trouble looked best from a distance. Silas reined in before the livery, his eyes scanning the yard until they landed on Eli. "Well now," he said, voice warm as poured molasses. "That's a fine horse you've got there." Eli didn't answer. Silas dismounted, dusting off his gloves in slow, theatrical strokes. "Name's Silas Drayton. I'm here for a young lady goes by Clara May. She's my fiancée. Took off in the night, poor thing. Got herself turned around." From the saloon porch, Sheriff Amos Rourke leaned on the railing, one hand resting near the butt of his revolver, not quite touching it. "That's so, indeed." Silas's smile didn't falter. "We've an understanding, her and me. I aim to take her home before she embarrasses herself further." Eli stepped away from his horse, placing himself between Silas and the livery door. She said no. Silas tilted his head, as if he hadn't heard right. "Beg pardon?" "She said no," Eli repeated, his voice as even as if they were discussing the weather. "You'll honor it." A quiet ripple moved through the onlookers. The air felt stretched, brittle, the kind that could snap with one wrong word. Silas's eyes cooled, though his smile stayed in place. Now, I don't know what she's told you, friend, but she's in no state to make decisions. Been through a lot, you understand. Eli didn't move. She understands enough. Silas took a step forward, closing the space between them. You fixing to stand in my way? Looks like it. For a moment, they held each other's gaze, the street around them gone still. The only sound was the faint creak of the sheriff's weight shifting on the porch. Amos's voice broke the silence. You heard the man, Drayton. Town don't take kindly to men who push past a no. Silas looked to the sheriff, then back to Eli. The smile dropped, replaced by something harder. This ain't over. He turned on his heel, mounted his horse in one fluid motion, and rode off without another word. The rhythm of his hooves faded into the distance, swallowed by the open land. Eli stayed where he was until the sound was gone. Only then did he turn back toward the livery. Clara was standing just inside the doorway, her hands gripping the blanket like it was the only thing anchoring her. He's gone, Eli said. She nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the road where Silas had disappeared. He'll come back, maybe, Eli admitted. But not today. She stepped forward, holding out the blanket to him, folded neat. Thank you. He took it without looking at her, tossing it over the cot. You don't owe me, thanks. The rain had started again, a soft, steady fall that blurred the edges of the street. Eli leaned against the doorway, watching it. Clara stood beside him, close enough to feel the quiet strength in his presence, far enough that neither had to move. After a while, she spoke. Why'd you help me? Eli's answer was simple. Because no one ever did that for me. They stayed there until the street emptied, the rain filling the silence between them. Neither reached for the other, but something had shifted. Subtle as the turn of a season. Somewhere out on the plain, Silas Drayton was still riding, his temper coiling tight. Somewhere in Cedar Hollow, the gossip would already be twisting into new shapes. But here, in the narrow space between two people, there was a stillness that felt almost like safety, and sometimes that was enough to keep breathing.